Hi, this is Luke Palmer, the creator of the series Too Kawaii for Comfort, and you are watching Anime Anonymous on YouTube. I remember because it existed for a while as just a script and an idea, and I remember seeing Big Fan by Patton Oswalt. Well, not by Patton Oswalt, but Patton Oswalt was starring in it. It's a very dark comedy about a obsessive sports fan, and I fell in love with it at the time, and it was a very powerful movie. I was just thinking, why hasn't anybody done anything like this about the anime fandom, like a super bleak, dark comedy thing? And I remember seeing The Guild at around the same time, maybe a few years later, when The Guild had a season where they all went to a convention, and I was watching, like, this is crazy, they're going to a convention. It's like, I did, but this isn't anything like a convention. Where's the guy being an asshole? Where's the guy having an emotional meltdown? And so I was like, what if we write that? What if we write the show that's like all the bad parts of going to an anime convention and kind of synthesizing that and making a drama out of that? And then I wrote it, and originally it was going to be a play, but then when we were reading the scene in my playwriting class in college, people were like, this isn't a play, this is a film, this is a movie. And I'm like, this is a movie, this isn't a play. And then it kind of came from there. Working with the people who we've been working with since college, and everybody always hops on the chance to do a fun narrative project, especially when it's all of us, because the majority of the work in Hollywood's just soul-crushing and awful and crappy and things. So, like, that's your one big advantage is, like, if you know the right people, you know, like, hey, we can do something fun for a little bit. We'll pay you. It's not a lot, but we'll pay you. And yeah, that was the cool thing, was like the reason why we got to make this for the way that we did, for the rate that we did, was because we loved everybody and everybody loved us. And we basically made a feature film for under 6 figures, which is really cool. And we got to make a movie at 25 at that age. That's pretty rad right there. I felt good about that. Actors was a combination. We just pick and choose. We pick and choose who we know. We pick and choose who's available. The actors was a combination of people we knew in casting online. That's the other problem with this series. And the other series, if we do a season 2, I want to try and make the cast more local, just so it's easier to coordinate. But with this, we had people from New York and people from LA cross-communicating with each other. And, that alone, that means just to get an actor down here is like $300, $400. The first one was Anime Boston. I think that when it comes to anime, there was the big one. There was Toonami, and I remember Dad taking me to see Princess Mononoke when it was in theaters, and that was the one that really effed me up. Toonami leads to Adult Swim, and then Adult Swim led to the internet, and all of that stuff. It was weird. I think YouTube and Instagram changed how people discover anime now, but back then it was just sort of like there. It wasn't something you had to kind of dig a little bit. You had to kind of find it. It wasn't like something that everybody made anime. There was only it was still a pretty small group back then. And Otakon was the biggest convention, and it wasn't as corporately viable as it used to be. I think Viz Media was the biggest name in anime at the time, and now it's Crunchyroll. And yeah, I remember going to Anime Boston because it was I read about anime conventions and all the webcomics that I used to read. And that's the thing that I noticed is I feel the biggest change is all these cons, they used to be really webcomic driven, and they used to have webcomic artists and writers as guests. And now it's out with the webcomics and with the cosplay. Cosplay has superseded webcomics as the great thing, which is kind of important because webcomics were always a local thing. They would always bring in the local webcomic artists and the local things. And now, yeah, that's kind of dead. Podcasts are way bigger than webcomics are right now. But at that time, webcomics seemed like the future of everything. Especially now webcomics live on in Facebook. But back then, people used to read Control-Alt-Delete unironically. Oh yeah, that's me. I remember, because I think there's something beautiful about, because I look back at a lot of the webcomics I read, they're garbage. They're not good. There's something kind of sad when you realize you're being raised on, and you had so much love for things that really didn't age well at all. But there was still love there, and there's still love that's acknowledging that. And love and pain kind of go hand in hand with each other. I kind of just want to portray it as like a very, to quote Camelot, it's a very silly place. It's a very silly place where, whether we want to or not, very real emotions come into play. Because, not that does that help. Now it had so many drama-free con trips, it's been great. But to me, that's where the humanity is. The humanity comes in when you least expect it. I'll do say it's like a car crash. You don't expect it to happen, but there it is. It's a very organic thing. And there's something beautiful about people having to confront their, I was just like, it's compelling. It's compelling because it's so ridiculous and silly. At the same time, it's not like a Venetian ball. It's cosplay. The costumes are costumes. And then real things happen, like people get hurt. And I think there's something very compelling about that. So that's kind of how I'd want to show the con scene. I'd want to try and show it as realistically as possible and with the type of people that's as possible, because there's some great kinds of people that, come to these places because this is where they feel home. It varies from state to state and area to area. I think Facebook, in that sense, has done a world of good because it has all these groups, it has all these people. Everybody knows everybody. Like, I keep running into the same people at all these cons, and I love that. And I love getting to, it's a friggin' community. This is a world that we're all in. As I said, I think the focus has shifted from webcomics to cosplay. And, looking back, I thought, oh, that's such a weird bad thing. I'm like, you know what? No, it's just another thing. It's just another thing. I think that there's just going to be more, and it's just going to be bigger. More and bigger, more and bigger, more and bigger. But thank God, there's things like Sabo, and there will always be little smaller community things rather than the big corporate money-making things. Because, this should in the end just about having fun. That's what it should be. It's fucking anime. What the fuck do you want from me? Yeah, somebody just well, it was a problem because it was just we fixed it eventually, but I was just miffed about that. And somebody we tried to enable it to be 18 and up, but the 18 and up button is so hidden inside of the YouTube, because nobody wants to use it because everybody's like, oh, I've given up hope on being a YouTuber. I don't think I can do it. I think that I can put my work on YouTube, and I hope that people view it, and I hope people like it. But I realize now with the shifting tides, there's no way I can, with my style of work, there's no way I can make a career in the long term off of it. What I can do is I can try and build a community, and I can try and make my work as accessible as possible. And yeah, as long as that, I've gotten words, I've gotten opportunities now, and that's because I've put my work out there. And the cool thing about doing that is now I've met people, I can collaborate. That's the problem with the film world, is the film world is super insular, because they only have festival screenings, because they have to protect, because they need to make money off of something. I would love, especially considering, I think in a weird way it's a blessing and a curse. Streaming TV is just an extension of the stuff that we grew up watching on the internet, and I think that now they're producing more series that speak to this kind of generation, I want to make shows for Netflix and Hulu, or even Verve or Crunchyroll one of these days. Because I like narrative content. That's where I feel the most at home. I like the fact that there's still a way to make that kind of work. I think it's a broken system right now, but it's always been a broken system. There's no good person should be in filmmaking. It is not a medium for responsible people. It's a medium for people who think that their idea is so good it deserves hundreds of thousands of dollars for literally seconds of it to be created. But I'd love to just keep creating and keep making stuff. That's the big thing. Mainly just sending it to friends and family and everybody they know. A lot of people aren't in the convention community that work on the show. Dan's doing his stand-up stuff in Florida right now. Sarah's working in New York. She's wondering about where she moves, but she still shares it and spreads it around to her friends. We've had a lot of good Tumblr links and friends because of her. What was I going to say? Kelly promotes in addition to promoting her book, and Charlie helps out whenever they can. Especially with self-promotion, Katie has fun doing this stuff, and she hangs out with Peter, so it's oh yeah, but everyone's got their own schedule, everyone's got their own lives, everybody's got their own things going on. We're trying to get this YouTube show, Mother's Basement, to review Too Quiet for Comfort, and if they can make a Mother's Basement reviewing our show, we will be okay, and we'll finally break out. It's hard to get people to watch things, especially when it's the creator trying to get you to watch things. It never works well, because like you've had, you know, as a creator, you know, you don't know if the person's actually giving you have to hear from someone you trust. You have to hear from a friend. You have to hear from a voice. You have to hear from a critic. You have to hear from anybody except the creator telling you to watch it. And that's something I've had to spend the last year kind of trying to accept and deal with. And YouTube now is more fickle than ever because it's just such a fucking, like, quantity over quality shit show over there. Because of the algorithm. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there are some YouTubers that are great, and there's some YouTubers. It's a terrible, it's so, you know, people are sad now. People are sad and people are crushed, and I get why. It's because it's very depressing. And, you know, I'm not saying we're doing anything better, but I'm saying there needs to be more balance. There needs to be some, like, weird little emotional things that make us feel more human, some goopier stuff amidst the, you know, content and criticism and all of that. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing I like about film is that it gives a very safe place to be reflective and be emotional, because somebody like carefully edited all of that sections. It allows for, because it's such a concentrated experience, I feel like it can allow for greater vulnerability, because it's hard to be vulnerable when you're just cranking out content all the time, and everyone's like, oh yeah, everyone likes, you know, to, you know, the basic idea behind YouTube now is like, oh, it's real, like, you know, it's great, it's people just being people, and I'm like, I think it's people just being people, but I think it's people being people in the moment. And there's only so much truth you can get in the moment, you know? And I think that in fiction you can find truth in other ways. And there's a place for both. There's a place for like this reality TV YouTube styling, and there's a place for good, solid quality fiction. The only problem is fiction's harder to make than reality.